Good morning. This is our fourth part of the first session that deals with evolution. I veered off into some other areas because I want to lay the groundwork for some of the things we'll do in the future. But we're dealing basically with evolution. I've shown 3 videos thus far. One called Ape to Man. It talks about the transition from Pleistocene chimpanzees to humans. A 2-part series with Walter Cronkite called Ape Man. This morning I'm going to show a film about Darwin himself so you can see what his life was like when he was dealing with in terms of bringing out these things. I'm not used to doing as many films from my previous series. I usually lecture for 3 hours, but in this particular process we have access to video, and I think it's very helpful for you to see the DVDs. It kind of gives you more basis to understand what's going on, and if I were just to speak to you, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm going to begin today with a chart which comes out of the Almanac. It's called Paleontology, the History of Life. And as you can see, as you look at it, it has a listing of when various things have happened on the planet. If you go back to the very beginning, you can see that it indicates that the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. That's right there, 4.5 billion years old. Earth and the solar system in present form. We move on down, you'll notice that in around 100 and, let's see if I can see it now. Flowering plants come in between 125 million and 150 million years ago. Dinosaurs come in. So dinosaurs go out about 75 million years ago. Dinosaurs came in anywhere between the 250 million years ago and primarily in the period 175 million years, 150 million years ago. They go out between 75 and 50 million years ago. Humans don't come in until about 4.5 to 5 million years ago. This indicates quite clearly, based upon the scientific evidence, that humans and dinosaurs were not here at the same time. You may recall from the last session I played a little excerpt from CBS Sunday Morning, in which the minister has organized a museum out in Oklahoma. And when the commentator asked him, "Are you saying that humans and dinosaurs were here at the same time?" He said, "Oh yes, oh yes." Because the Bible says on the 6th day, God created so-and-so, and that was his only basis of going with that particular theory. But we know from the bones and the specimens, the dinosaurs and humans have never been on the planet at the same time, which means that anything you've ever seen with dinosaurs and humans on the planet at the same time was science fiction, although they did not tell you that it was science fiction. This is the cover of National Geographic magazine. It's November 1985. It's volume 163, number 5, The Search for Early Man. If you get the opportunity to go to a thrift store or to a used bookstore, search for this particular National Geographic magazine. Has some very, very good information in it. One of the excerpts, we see Raymond Dart, who's the person that we saw in some of the videos. He was a South African paleontologist. And there's a phrase here that I find particularly important. It's right here. It says, today, I read up the screen, I'm sorry, I can't quite see it there. He says, today, Africa is recognized as the very cradle of the human race. We've been in the process for the last several weeks of answering 3 questions. Why study Africa? Our very simple answer was because it's there. We are humans living on planet Earth. We should be aware of everything that's happening on planet Earth. The second question we had was, why is there confusion over Africa? And of course, we reviewed the works of many persons who we call scholars, who spoke in favor of Africa. And then there were many persons, primarily Europeans, who out of ignorance spoke against Africa. So the average person has heard both things, and that's led to confusion. But as we've come to establish, in the third question, what is the connection between African history and world history? There would be no world history, so far as we're concerned as humans, were it not for Africa. Because Africa and Africa alone is the place where human life on this planet has originated. Raymond Dart, who found the Tong baby in South Africa, in 1985 said, "Today, Africa is recognized as the very cradle of human civilization." Now, remember what Hegel said. Hegel said Africa is no part of world history. And we've shown how incorrect Hegel was. Further on in the magazine, there's some charts. This particular chart shows various places in the world where fossils have been found. It's hard to see in the blow up here, but the color brown signifies the earliest fossils. There's one up here, there's some right there, down through South Africa there's some. In Europe there are none. As you recall from the DVDs, the first fossil they found was the Neanderthal man, found in the Neander Valley. They then found the Java man, and after that, all of the older fossils came one after the other from Africa. And this is continuation showing you the southeast area where the middle line fossils were found, which helps to also prove the diffusion of humans out of Africa into other parts of the world. And this chart shows the correspondences of the skull formations of the various fossils, starting with the Australopithecines down at the bottom. So I'm gonna get my light together. The Australopithecine down here, and then moving up to Homo erectus and Homo habilis. And you also recall that initially when they found the fossils, they had a straight line type idea about human creation, that we start with modern humans and go back in a straight line to the oldest human that they wanted to call the missing link. That held up until they got to Africa. Once they got to Africa, they found that there were time periods in which many different species of human type characters existed. And that has led now to our present concept of a family tree rather than a straight line of humans. In other words, some human type species started out, evolved, and went on, and then ended. Others started out and ended quickly. We are the only remaining human type species on planet Earth. We're the ones who started out and made it all the way to the end. Now, this is a phrase that's been attributed to Malcolm X. It illustrates a connection between philosophy and actions. Malcolm said, your philosophy determines your thought pattern. Your thought pattern determines your attitude. Your attitude determines your behavior pattern. Your behavior pattern determines your actions. Therefore, what you think actually determines how you will act. Philosophy is very, very important. Your philosophy determines your thought pattern. Your thought pattern determines your attitude. Your attitude determines your behavior pattern. And your behavior pattern determines your actions. Therefore, what you think actually determines how you will act. Now, we started talking about myths last week. And I went back and found a little display done by Maulana Karenga. Karenga says that one of the things that myth does is to outline human possibilities. Another thing it does is to outline human probabilities. And thirdly, it outlines human potentialities. So if you read the myth correctly, you'll know what are the possibilities for this society and for the various characters in the society. If you read the myth carefully, you'll know what are human probabilities. What's probably going to happen in society based upon what they believe. And then thirdly, what is the potential for various characters based upon what the myth says. We read the Adam and Eve myth from the Hebrews, and it said that God made the animals, brought the animals to Adam to be named. He named them. God made Eve, almost like an afterthought, brought Eve to Adam, he named her. That sets up the hierarchy of God, man, and woman. So now in a society that has that particular myth as its basis, what is the human possibility for females? What are the probabilities? What are the potentialities? Based upon a society which has as its foundation myth the fact that females are not equal to males. And in fact, that God really had no plan to make females in the first place. Adam asked for her, not God. It also says something about God, by the way. Or your concept of God. Now, there's a epic poem called the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's perhaps one of the oldest written stories on earth. It comes to us from ancient Sumeria and was originally written on 12 clay tablets in cuneiform script. It's about the adventures of the historical king of Uruk, somewhere between 2750 and 2500 BCE. BCE stands for before the Common Era. It's another way of saying before Christ. We've been taught to say before Christ in this society because this society is based upon a Christian foundation. Everybody in the world is not Christian. Some folks are offended having to name time based upon somebody who they do not believe was the Messiah. So scientists have created BCE, before the Common Era. So we're talking now about a period of 4,700 to 4,500 years ago. The Common Era is 0 to 2000. We're in 2005 now, almost 2006. This is before that. So we're looking back 4,000 some years. These tablets were created. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim is instructed by the god Ea to build an ark consisting of 7 stories, each with 9 chambers, 72 chambers in all. Now, this again is 4,750 years ago to 4,500 years ago, long before Genesis was written. And this is taken from one of the tablets. And he went into the ark with his sons and his wife's sons, don't quite understand that, before the waters of the flood. All that I had, I caused to be put on board. The seed of many kinds of living creatures. I brought to the ship my family and all my kindred, herds and flocks of the fields, wild beasts of the fields. Utnapishtim sails off with a considerable retinue, for example, not just the immediate family and the animals, but all the artisans of the city, and a navigator, plus a cargo of jewels and treasure. And when the waters finally subside after the poetic catalog of destruction wrought by the flood that sounds remarkably realistic, he sends out a dove, a raven, and a sparrow to search for dry land. This comment comes from a book called What the Bible Really Says, which talks about the background for a number of the stories we read in the Bible that we had no idea where they came from. When I was growing up, I thought Adam and Eve was the only creation story on earth. I certainly never heard any others. And now I've got books here. I've shown you several books. Parallel Myths by J.E. Berline, and also another book I have here, which I've taken this from, creation myths by David Lemming and Margaret Lemming that have creation stories from all around the world. All people basically have a creation story. I did not know that. Now, most people have no clear knowledge of history, and therefore they do not know key things that would tie together the story of the development of humans and the origin of things connected with various cultures. I did not know, for instance, that there was something called the Epic of Gilgamesh.